A cold millionaire faints at the beach, wakes up, the single mom who saved him is the same girl he fired years ago. The ocean stretched wide like a patient heartbeat, pulsing with the rhythm of tides and time. Tourists dotted the sand, laughter competing with the cries of gulls above. But amid the warmth of the golden sun and salty breeze, one man stood out like a ghost misplaced in paradise. Ethan Vance, the billionaire tech mogul known more for his ruthlessness than his riches, staggered across the beach with uneven steps. His face, usually taut with power and poise, was pale, sweat beading his brow despite the cool wind. People walked past him, some recognizing him from magazine covers or Forbes lists but too stunned, or indifferent, to act. He collapsed near a lifeguard stand, his designer watch sinking slightly into the wet sand. And no one moved. Except for her. "Mommy, that man fell." Mia's tiny finger pointed, tugging at her mother's sundress as they packed up their picnic. Clara Bennett turned, blinking against the sunlight. Her heart lurched. "Stay right here," she told her daughter, bolting across the beach before she even registered her own motion. Clara dropped to her knees beside the man. His pulse was faint. Breathing shallow. She tilted his head, performed quick CPR with hands that had once trained in first aid, and shouted for help. A few people gathered, murmuring. Only when the paramedics arrived and lifted him onto the gurney did she recognize the man she just saved. Ethan Vance. The same man who had fired her 5 years ago. The same man who had shredded her confidence with one cold, dismissive meeting that ended her dream job, and nearly ruined her life. When Ethan blinked awake, the antiseptic smell of the hospital stung more than the 4 in his arm. He stirred, confused, until a nurse gently steadied him. "You fainted from dehydration and exhaustion, sir," she said. "You're lucky someone saw you collapse." He didn't respond. He didn't want small talk. He never did. "Who found me?" he asked curtly. The nurse smiled. "A woman. Clara Bennett. She saved your life." The name landed like a slow echo in a canyon. Clara Bennett. He hadn't thought of her in years. And yet, how could he forget? The young assistant with fire in her ideas and kindness in her voice. The one he let go when she'd taken a few too many days off caring for a sick mother. He hadn't cared about reasons back then, only bottom lines. He'd forgotten the details. But he remembered her eyes. The way they pleaded, not for her job, but for understanding. She'd left the room without a word. And he never looked back. Until now. Clara didn't expect a call from the hospital, but when the nurse said he wanted to see her, she hesitated. Then, reluctantly, she said yes. Mia was asleep in the back seat of her rusted-out sedan when Clara walked through the sterile halls. She peeked into room 206. He looked smaller, somehow, without the armor of his tailored suits and fast-talking executives. Ethan turned his head slowly and stared at her. His throat moved like it swallowed a stone. "Clara," he said. "Mr. Vance," she replied, arms crossed, not out of hostility, but defense. Her voice was calm, but her heart rattled in her chest. "Ethan," he corrected. "Please." She didn't sit. He nodded faintly. "You saved my life." "I would have done that for anyone," she said. Her words were polite, but not soft. She wasn't trying to impress him anymore. There was no fear in her eyes now, only dignity and distance. She had changed. He had not. Yet something in him shifted as he looked at her, truly looked at her for the first time in years. They didn't talk long. Just enough for him to say thank you. She nodded, said she had to get back to her daughter, and left without expecting anything more. And that should have been it. But Ethan couldn't stop thinking about her. He asked his assistant to find Clara's records, what had happened after she left. She had worked 3 part-time jobs. Her mother passed away a year after she was fired. Clara raised her daughter alone, never remarried, never complained. There were no headlines. No lawsuits. She hadn't even asked for severance. She just moved on, quietly, into a harder life. He'd stepped on a flower and hadn't noticed the fragrance was missing until now. A week later, Clara came home to find a sleek black car parked outside her tiny apartment. Ethan stepped out, awkward in a neighborhood that smelled like fried food and faded dreams. "I'm not here to apologize," he said. "Because sorry doesn't feel like enough." She tilted her head, wary. "I'm here because I realized I became everything I swore I wouldn't. Cold. Careless. I didn't see you, Clara. Not really. But you saw me, when you saved me." A silence hung between them. The wind tugged gently at the hem of her dress. "I didn't save you for recognition," she said. "I know," he said. "But maybe I was meant to fall right there, because life had a lesson to teach." He reached into his coat and handed her an envelope. "What's this?" "A job offer. Director of Community Engagement. Full salary. Flexible hours. Work from home if you want. And full benefits, for you and Mia." She stared at him, stunned. "You don't owe me anything," she whispered. "No," he said, voice raw. "But I owe the world someone like you in a position to make it better. And maybe I owe myself the chance to be someone better, too." She didn't answer that day. But 3 days later, she walked into his office, wearing the same quiet confidence she'd had years ago, but with deeper roots now. Ethan smiled, not like a CEO, but like a man who just rediscovered something sacred. From that day forward, they worked side by side. Clara built programs for single mothers. Food drives. After-school coding clubs. She led with grace, turning pain into purpose. And Ethan changed, too. He began to listen. To employees, to community voices, to the quiet truths beneath loud profits. Their relationship grew, first as colleagues, then slowly, tentatively, into friendship. And then something more. Ethan spent weekends visiting Clara and Mia. They played board games on floors covered in crayon drawings. He read bedtime stories. The billionaire who once measured success by stock prices now counted giggles and spaghetti-stained shirts among his riches. It wasn't until Christmas Eve, under a modest string of lights and paper snowflakes in Clara's kitchen, that he finally spoke the words he'd been carrying like a fragile flame. "You saved my life twice, Clara." She smiled gently. "Only once." "No. That day on the beach, yes, physically. But you also woke something up in me. Something I thought I'd buried under ambition." He knelt beside Mia, brushing a curl from her cheek as she slept on the couch, arms wrapped around a teddy bear he'd given her. "I want to build a life with you both," he said. "If you'll have me." Tears shimmered in Clara's eyes, but she didn't cry. She reached out, took his hand, and nodded. "You're not the man who fired me," she said. "You're the man who learned. And that's worth everything." Their wedding wasn't lavish. Just family, friends, and sunlight streaming through stained glass. Mia was the flower girl, beaming as she danced down the aisle. The press had a field day. Billionaire marries single mom who once worked for him. But the headlines didn't matter. What mattered was the way Ethan looked at Clara like every heartbeat was a vow. And the way Clara laughed again, fully, freely, as if the world had finally remembered to be kind. Some say fate works in mysterious ways. But sometimes, fate just needs a second chance, and the courage of a single mom who refused to be bitter, even when life was. Because in a world full of closed doors and cold hearts, Clara Bennett became the quiet miracle that taught a broken man how to live again. And together, they built something far richer than money could ever measure. They built a home. A legacy. And a love story that began not with roses, but with redemption.